Does it ever feel as though, at times, gaming as a whole has lost its spark? It seems like almost every time I get on my computer to play a game, I get bored in a matter of minutes. It makes me think back to times when I was a kid and would be ecstatic to have the opportunity to play such simple games, and now, with a plethora of new games at my fingertips, it ironically feels like there's nothing to play. Now, of course this could be a result of getting older and acquiring responsibilities, however, to say so feels cheap and doesn't quite hit the nail on the head for me. It's important to understand that gaming has changed. I've been wondering why this is for quite some time, and there are a few possible reasons within my mind which I believe could be causing it. Now, depending on how long you've been playing video games, I'm sure you've noticed various trends that games seem to follow. Certain years will see an uprising in different video game styles, and developers will seem to piggyback off the current most popular games in order to try and stay with the times. This is natural in practically every setting of life, right? Adaptation. As society and people develop, new styles and trends are favored in order for companies and products to maintain relevancy. This is seen in the fashion world, film world, and especially the vast world of video games. Due to the rapid advancement in technology over the past 40 years, this industry has seen many changes over its relatively short lifespan. It's destined to. Technologically, that is. On the other side of this coin is the business aspect of the industry. When analyzing from a business perspective, things have generally maintained consistency within this space. That is, until one cataclysmic release that rocked the world of gaming permanently. Fortnite. When Fortnite, or more specifically Fortnite Battle Royale, was released on September 26, 2017, a very interesting phenomenon was unknowingly about to begin. Now, Fortnite was a relatively simple game in its first season, a Hunger Games style Battle Royale that, at the time, was similar to PUBG and other games alike. However, it was not until Fortnite's second season, Season 2, that the state of gaming saw one of its biggest contributions since Minecraft's release nearly half a decade prior. Introducing the Fortnite Battle Pass, a subtle yet ingenious way of influencing players to spend more time on the game. It was simple. You play, do challenges, acquire XP, and slowly unlock new fun and creative interactable traits within the game, such as skins, emotes, pickaxes, etc. Now, the concept of a battle pass was not new. For example, Dota 2 has had a battle pass system for years. It was one subtle detail from Fortnite's developers that made it different. The paid battle pass. In Fortnite, there existed two battle passes, one which was free and one which was paid, approximately $10 USD per season. By operating their game in this manner, along with the item shop and in-game currency system, the Fortnite developers were able to provide their game at a price of $0. Completely free. This game was so successful that it was able to maintain programming costs, server costs, etc. simply through in-game microtransactions. For a game of this scale, this had practically never been done before. Aside from the game being extremely fun and relatively fresh at the time, with cool eccentric objects such as the Boogie Bomb, it created one of the most ingenious mechanisms for people to play. This simple idea of making a game free to play by earning funding costs from microtransactions caused an immense impact in the world of gaming that I don't believe even the developers were ready for. I mean, I'm sure you remember back in those prime Fortnite days how big the game truly was. It was arguably the biggest game in the world and was using this payment mechanism. Now, with that, it didn't take long for other game developers to jump on board. Games such as Apex Legends, Ring of Elysium, Realm Royale, Hyperscape, and even Black Ops 4's Blackout sought to do the same thing as Fortnite did, and it worked. Well, for the most part that is. You see, for the previous 40 years, the business aspect of video games was practically unchanged. Most games had either a base cost or a subscription play mechanism in order to fund each project. Microtransactions have existed for quite some time, however, nobody did it quite like Fortnite. Just like that, a whole new world of video game opportunity sprouted from one simple idea. I mean, even I remember being super excited as I watched all these great looking games releasing as free. The subsequent few years after Fortnite's big boom saw the release of several games trying to follow in their footsteps, but also currently active games beginning to do the same, such as Rocket League for example. Generally speaking, it was a great time to be a kid who was unwilling to spend much money on video games. Rather than saving money to buy one good AAA title, many excellent free options were available instead. It was a massive cornucopia, and for the average player, it was unlike anything seen before. I mean, on any day, one could pick between playing Fortnite, Apex, Rocket League, all AAA worthy games, completely free. It was truly amazing. However, like any good story, there comes a climax. Of all the battle royales released within this time frame, aside from Fortnite, there's one other that caused a similar dent in the gaming community. Call of Duty Warzone. By far the biggest name to hop on the free-to-play trend. When this game released, it was revered by many as one of the greatest games of all time and was the true first attempt of a massive AAA name such as Call of Duty dipping their hands into the microtransaction-based free game system discussed previously. With the assistance of the COVID-19 pandemic, and Fortnite losing its traction which it had had for the previous couple of years, this game brought the players of one of the biggest franchises into the new realm of video games. The massive map size and overall quality of this game when it dropped was second to none, and revitalized the game genre which had seemed to be plateauing. Through this, they proved that a massive company such as Infinity Ward could pull off the free-to-play game style which Fortnite had done 2 years prior. They had succeeded, showing other big companies that it was possible. Despite this grand achievement, things got stale. Most of these battle royales began to lose the flair which they once had. Don't get me wrong, Fortnite, Warzone, Apex, and many others were still very popular, however, their dominance began to fade. Playing a game of Fortnite or Warzone then just simply didn't quite feel the same as it did in their prime. Of course, this is a natural aspect of a game's lifespan, but for such massively influential titles, it was interesting to see. With these games fading, many of the smaller free-to-play titles were completely lost in the storm. You see, while Fortnite brought about a revolution of gaming with its microtransaction-based free-to-play system, its success also forced many developers to follow suit. Overwatch, Ark Survival Evolved, even Halo Infinite all were made free in order to compensate for this change. From a business perspective, it was more profitable for a company that spent millions of dollars making a game to release it free and hope that through microtransactions they could make up for their development costs in the way done by the previously mentioned games. If not, their sales simply wouldn't be enough due to the now massive free-to-play market. After all, why would someone pay money for a game when there's so many free alternatives? You see, this forced a shift in the game development world, and the repercussions are still visible to this day. I mean, anyone even somewhat aware of the gaming scene from 2020 to 2023 would certainly remember the influx of free-to-play titles. The main problem with this is that the microtransaction system only works if the player base is massive. This is why games like Warzone were still surviving. Their player bases were huge, allowing for enough microtransactions to fund the games for free. This whole system caused a chain reaction, resulting now in hundreds of titles being made free and thus available to all customers, further dividing the market. This divide not only split the player bases, but obviously split the revenue per title. All of these new games completely oversaturated the video game market and caused a wealth distribution which many major companies couldn't make up for. This is arguably why games like Halo Infinite were not as successful as they were expected to be. Even with the name Halo, not only was the franchise past its prime, but it tried to compete in a free-to-play market which now had several hundred massive games. For a game of Halo's budget, it was simply unable to garner the attention it had hoped for due to the game quantity inflation. There was no real need for it because of the hundreds of other options now present. You see, had this free revolution never started, there would have been no chain reaction and massive game quantity inflation. The main issue is that from the perspective of large companies, this free model was mostly unsustainable. This is why around this time, and even today, you'll see games being rushed to release and end up feeling cheap and forced. On the flip side, smaller companies were given more advantages than ever because they could now produce games and place them on the same level as AAA titles. They no longer needed to compete with a AAA price tag, but could still make equal revenue through in-game purchases so long as their game was fresh and garnered enough marketing. Now, this isn't inherently bad, however, as seen, it mostly led to repetition and practically no true development within the space. Little innovation was brought. Just more and more cash grabs and clones designed to do nothing but achieve what Fortnite had done amidst its prime. Around 2022 to 2023, the gaming scene, to many, felt as though there was a hole or something missing. Despite there being practically the most games in circulation ever, it ironically felt as though there was nothing to play. This massive inflation of readily available free-to-play games on the market diluted the value of every game as a whole. As mentioned previously, the gaming world was divided like never before. All of the new Call of Duties began to feel like cookie-cutter garbage remakes and were certainly not worth spending AAA prices. Even Overwatch 2 wasn't succeeding despite being heavily anticipated. As mentioned, Halo Infinite, Multiverses, the list goes on. I mean, I can't even remember the last time a AAA game dropped and was met with praise. Video games simply became too easy to produce and the market saw too much inflow. That, combined with the shortening of our attention spans from social media and whatnot, certainly contributed to this empty feeling in the gaming world. Because of this, the scene felt desolate. People were hungry for something new and still are to this day. Despite all of this, throughout this entire shift in gaming, there were few genres unaffected. Those being sports and strategy games, as well as the more narrative games. Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Elden Ring, Starfield, even games like Red Dead Redemption 2 again making a little comeback just off their single player aspect alone. This is why you'll notice many of these single player titles were doing massive numbers in the past few years. People were getting tired of the repetitiveness of the multiplayer market and were looking for some more original experiences, as would be expected. You see, due to the competitiveness of the multiplayer market, games were being rushed out half-finished and could barely keep an audience for a week. Games began moving like memes, growing massively for short periods of time and then being forgotten in a matter of days. This never happened for most narrative games because they still operated as they always had prior to Fortnite. Now, these games are important to mention because they ground the entire industry. It's nice to know that if multiplayer games are beginning to get stale, you'll always have story games to fall back on. While the multiplayer scene will constantly change, the story game genre will always be relatively static. And with that said, I believe that games like this are the true heart and soul of the entire industry. For me, looking back at games like Billy Hatcher on GameCube, to Mario Sunshine, to The Walking Dead, Call of Duty campaigns, the Subspace Emissary, Super Mario Galaxy, and even to Odyssey, all of these experiences evoke this raw desire to explore and traverse new environments, whether they're 20 years old or brand new. Hell, I remember playing Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for the first time and it genuinely changed my perspective on gaming as a whole. Obviously there will be good and bad experiences, but the point is, narrative games will always have a place in this business because it exists within each and every one of us, the desire to adventure and live out an exciting story. Without these kinds of games, the entire scene would feel very dull in my opinion. It's just comforting to know that in years to come, these types of games will still be thriving. In the modern day, it's hard to see any imminent change in the current system. Things still feel quite barren. The free-to-play microtransaction-based games are slowly beginning to die out, and we're seeing rise to many new original titles from smaller developers. For example, in mid-January of 2024, Palworlds took the gaming community by storm, and in early February, Helldivers 2 made an impact as well. Surprisingly, Fortnite continues to succeed despite being not as popular as it once was, but it just feels so marketing driven and I feel it's outgrown itself. When I play Fortnite in current times, it feels almost as if I'm walking through Times Square with the sheer amount of advertising there is. The same applies to Warzone and most modern COD games. It feels as if many of these large games have little passion put into them and are just straight filler designed to do nothing but generate money. Cash grabs, as mentioned before. I can't imagine myself spending tons of money on a lot of the current mainstream games out there because, in my opinion, they all feel the same. All this brought from an ingenious business mechanism gone too far and stretched to its limits. Fortnite changed the world of gaming permanently, and I don't believe it was for the better, despite being so fun in its prime. In a way, I see Prime Fortnite as a peak achievement of gaming, perhaps never to be surpassed. That said, there's always hope. The gaming community is in need of a massive change. Fortnite, though revolutionary, ripped a hole in the scene which led to a massive degeneration of video game passion and authenticity. Fortunately, with the increasing ease of video game creation, as mentioned several times throughout this video, smaller companies are gaining the power to create games on similar levels as AAA companies at smaller price tags. Perhaps we'll see a rise in these kinds of games and see a decrease in AAA dominance. This would bring great competition and innovation to the space, which is heavily needed. We're entering a new era of gaming. As these microtransaction-based games slowly begin to die off, and with some pressure from smaller development teams, we might finally see something truly new for the first time in nearly 7 years. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels this way. I know there are others who desire the same thing as me. And, in my opinion, it's only a matter of time before a few rebellious game developers get creative and start a revolution of their own.